everyone doing? Yay! Glad to hear it. Hi, my name is Fred Dillion, and I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Janxin Leu.
Hello, hi.
And we're really excited to be here today to talk about innovative solutions to both boost resilience in our students and to improve social emotional learning skills, and some of the tools that are now available online and in different places where you can easily access them and use them in a variety of ways. So we're really excited to share some of this information with you. So first, just a little bit of background about who we are. So HopeLab, what we do is we combine science, design, and technology, all with the goal of improving health of young people. And our approach combines science-driven design and strategic partnerships to really ensure broad impact throughout the world. So we're the health-focused arm of the Omidyar Group, which represents the philanthropic, personal, and professional interests of Pam and Pierre Omidyar. And Pam Omidyar is here today with us. Hi, Pam. So thank you so much, Pam, for all the support over the years of the projects that HopeLab has been trying to do to boost this whole area of resilience in young people and kids. And so at HopeLab, we believe one of the most powerful things we can do to make the world a better place is to help people thrive, even when bad things happen. A 2014 survey by the American College Health Association found that 94% of counseling center directors reported a steady increase in the number of college students with severe psychological problems. And 89% reported an increase in a recent Psychology Today blog post. Dr. Peter Gray points out that students are increasingly having emotional crises over problems of everyday life. So this is a real issue that needs to be addressed and looked at from the earliest years all the way up to the later years for youth. So I'm going to now turn it over to my colleague, Janxin, Dr. Leu, who's going to talk some about the science of resilience before we get into some of the tools.
Thank you, Fred. So what does that look like, this emotional fragility that we were just talking about? I mean, if you think about your own experiences as an education professional and the teachers that you work with, as well as the youth, you can see it when there is an adverse event in the life of someone that you know. And there's a real struggle for some people to bounce back from that kind of adversity. The good news is that we each have a superpower at our disposal for aiding us to come back from those adverse experiences and actually be transformed by those negative events into something that is more meaningful and allows us to connect with others more authentically, drive towards a greater purpose, and be more effective in our lives. And that is resilience. So here, there are a lot of different definitions of resilience. Our take on it is this idea that resilience is innate capacity to persevere through adversity, challenge, insult, or injury. And the innate capacity part is what we really want to emphasize today, because 3 decades worth of behavioral science shows us that it's ordinary magic. It's not just that some people have it and others don't. It's modifiable. It's like a muscle that we can exercise given the right kinds of experiences that we ourselves can shape for ourselves in our work environment, but can also provide in our own students' lives. So the first one of the 3-legged stool of purpose, if you will, is a sense of purpose. And by purpose, we mean that this is a far-reaching, steady goal. People think about it as a North Star in your life. I think many of you felt a calling, probably, to teach and educate the hearts and minds of youth. And this is something that probably feels personally meaningful to you, but also is self-transcending. And so what we mean by this is that a sense of purpose for ourselves as education professionals, for our students as well, is something that allows us to shift and persist when we come across inevitable setbacks. And there's a lot of research, though our colleagues David Yeager, as well as the work of Angela Duckworth and others, show that the relevance of a sense of purpose, this North Star, and how it's relevant to academic performance and engagement. The students are more motivated when they possess a purpose for learning, right? Which doesn't mean a grade, right? It doesn't mean doing well on the next test or exam. It's really when they understand how their learning today will help them accomplish the meaningful goals in their tomorrow. What is this? This is now a short, thin glimpse about the relevance of purpose to our biological health, just to show you how deep the science is and how promising it is around this idea of cultivating a sense of purpose in order to bolster the resilience of youth and ourselves as education professionals. Purpose has been found to have an impact on our gene expression. The people who report happiness from living a life that's aligned with this positive external purpose have also been shown to have a more favorable gene expression. And what this means is that there's a correlation or association with less inflammation at the biological level in our cells, and also increased antiviral reactivity. So research shows that purpose is better for your health than just the pursuit of pleasure. And I think this is a really important distinction. There's a little eyes there. So oftentimes, there's a lot of research and there's a lot of talk about the importance of happiness. And this is different from what we're talking about with purpose. So it's not about just the momentary sensation of feeling good or having happy students, happy youth, happy teachers and colleagues. You know from your own experiences in the classroom, the work that you do is challenging. The work that your students are doing internally is challenging. It doesn't feel good sometimes, right? But that's not what we're going after. We are going after this larger sense of purpose to be instilled. And that will allow you, even when it doesn't feel good, to again, persist through the adversity and challenges. A lot of this work actually was illuminated by the life experiences of Viktor Frankl and his experiences during the Holocaust. And he wrote in The Man's Search for Meaning, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how." So the second active ingredient in our framework of resilience is connection. And by this we mean authentic relationship with others. Many of us were just at the talk with Sherry Turkle. She's saying the same thing, right? It's not just about connecting online. It's really about feeling safe, feeling supported, feeling held by others, a sense of belonging in a climate, community, relationship. And it really is embedded in the science of loneliness. This is the opposite of what we're talking about with loneliness, this authentic sense of connection. By loneliness, I just want to clarify that it's not the number of people, of friends that you can count. It is actually the feeling, the affective portion of our subjective experience of what's going on in the world around us. So we mean the long-term condition of wanting to have social connection and yet not experiencing that kind of social intimacy. And science, again, demonstrates that this feeling of loneliness, again, not the number of people you're surrounded by, but the actual feeling of loneliness, wreaks havoc on the body. So you can feel alone, but be in a crowd or be surrounded by friends. We know from the work that Mindset Scholars Network, as well as many other researchers, how this actually can show up in the lives of our students. So the font is probably too small. I'm going to just walk you down one path so that you can connect with how the science relates to the experience of youth in our classrooms. So many of you have students from a social group which is negatively stereotyped or underrepresented. So people look around the classroom, they don't see others who look like them or share their background. Or they could be receiving critical feedback from a teacher. Right? So if the mindset is that the student believes that this is actually typical, and it's just normal to worry about whether you belong when you're struggling in the context of change and learning, right? If you have that psychological mindset, then you have the interpretation. Oh, this is a normal part of being in school. And if you have that interpretation of that experience, then you have a behavioral response that looks like sustained involvement with the academic environment and learning processes. It's sustained engagement, right? The effortful skill building. And of course, then we know that that results in the academic outcome, where you have increased academic engagement and performance. And these are the kinds of positive outcomes that really reinforce a sense of belonging and are actually, it's a cycle, right, are actually informed by a student feeling like they belong in the classroom. So I want to give you a clinical example of how this impacts the health to show you how deep this sense of belonging and how important it is. There's a study that was done at UCLA, Dr. Steve Cole, as well as others, in the 1990s that found that the most reliable predictor of death in HIV-positive gay men was whether or not he was out or open about his sexuality. Now think about this. Why would that be? But think about what it feels like to be in the closet about something. Or think about your students' experiences when they look around and they feel like the people around them may not understand, for example, if they come from a poor background. It's lonely. You hide behind a false identity. You're worried about being revealed or exposed, right? And you live in a way that actually cuts off opportunities for social connection. And that's what you can probably observe as teachers. But what's happening at the biological level is that there are stress hormones which are flooding your body, your tissues swell up, and your white blood cells swarm out to protect you against this perceived threat. And researchers found that closeted men with HIV died an average of 2 to 3 years earlier than men who had come out. And what's really important about this study is they controlled for the amount of pragmatic support that these men received. So it wasn't about whether you had somebody to help you get medication, help out with the daily tasks. Again, it's about the feeling of perceived threat. Right? When you feel, when you have the subjective experience of threat and that you don't belong, then our body wants to feel safe and reacts to this. So our bodies don't feel safe and we're likely to get sick. That's what's at stake with this important leg of connection resilience. Here's a great quote from social psychologist Barbara Fredrickson. She's the author of Love 2.0. It's a really beautiful book, The Science of Love and Connection. You have within you the fuel to thrive and to flourish, and to leave this world in better shape than you have found it. You tap into it whenever you feel connected to others and loved. There are a lot of scientists who don't write very well. Barbara Fredrickson is I recommend the book. All right, the last leg then is control. And what we mean by this, because control is a word that means many different things, but our take on this is really this idea of a belief in your power to affect your destiny or your students' beliefs of empowerment. And we know that when you feel like you can affect your destiny, affect the environment that you're around, and have mastery around it, it's the engine of motivation. It's what allows you then to act and take actions to stay engaged and to increase your skill building. The research on grit by Angela Duckworth and others shows the connection again with this important aspect of self-control and goal direction relative to staying engaged, sustained, and persevering in the face of adversity. We'll read this. And in our own work here at HopeLab, where we, based on the psychology and biology of resilience, created a game called Remission, which was targeted at pediatric cancer patients and really trying to empower them to be in service of their own health by playing a first-person shooter game, where they can literally in their arsenal take the medications, which sometimes they feel like the effect of, but in this game can use it to kill cancer in a number of different ways. This results in a strong sense of self-efficacy. So it's another demonstration of both the importance of self-efficacy, but also the ways that technology can actually engage students and engage youth to be in service and be empowered in what they can do. Feeling empowered can help us heal. There's a much larger story around the benefits of a game like Remission, just as one example of the tool. We won't go into it today, but if you're interested, you can look at HopeLab.org. So I'm going to invite Fred to lead us to one of our favorite videos around what this actually looks like, purpose and connection, control, and resilience.
Yeah, thanks, Janxin. So yeah, I would like to now share a video that really, I think, personifies and really exemplifies all three of these pieces. So I invite you to watch this and think about purpose, connection, and control in this context. That video, many of us have seen it several times, and every time it sort of just hits, because I think it so speaks to the magic of that combination of his purpose, his real goal. He's really trying to attain something that was personally really meaningful and inspiring to him. The fact of connection with his father, the deep connection, the sharing that pain together, and also the fortitude that they had together, and then ultimately his sense of wanting to have some control and finish that race and the power of that. So I do think it's a great example of the kind of things we're thinking about when we think about resilience, and how you might think about talking about this with students as well. So I'm going to pass it next to, I'm going to keep going for another slide or two, is that right? So the big question then is, this is the combination of purpose, connection, and control, all of them equally coming to resilience. And our big question that we've been asking is, how might we help enhance purpose, connection, and control in our everyday lives and in the lives of our students? So this is important for us as educators, as people who are leading schools, as well as for our students. So how can we do this across the board? So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about some tools for each of these areas that we are available that could both benefit, both sometimes in some cases for teachers specifically, in some cases for students. And we'll try to talk through what those tools are, as well as some of the research that's behind some of them. So we're gonna pass out some materials as well so you can follow along. So if some folks could help, that would be great.
Say a word about HopeLab's philosophy around technology, especially in light of the great talk that Sherry Jorkel gave this morning. Our philosophy is really agnostic about technology. It's not inherently good or bad. It's a way that we can disseminate and amplify and create, in a way, greater connection. So what we'll be doing today is talking about some of the technology tools that you can put in your own toolkit for the classroom. But what I want to say first is that, again, the idea is not to solve all these problems with an app or to supplant real-time human interaction, face-to-face, open conversations by looking down on your phone, right? Instead, I think the promise really is, one, we can meet youth where they're at, which is looking down at their phone right now, turn them outward towards each other. And I think the other one is, in a couple of cases, Mark Brackett is here, and you'll be hearing from him in the afternoon, but it's a great example of a tool we'll be talking about later on called the Mood Meter, where you take an in-classroom activity environment, you use technology to then extend the experience and extend the conversation beyond the classroom into homes over the weekend, right? So I just wanted to say that because I really agree with so many points around that Sherry Jorkel brought up this morning, and I think we have a slightly different take around the promise of technology. So food for thought. All right. With that in mind, some tools for purpose. So this is that first active ingredient here. And these are, again, some of these tools are evidence-based, and fewer of those are evidence-based and actually have impact data around the tool, the tech tool itself, right? So here's an example of Stephen Covey around this idea of a personal mission statement. The idea here that writing or reviewing a mission statement changes you because it forces you to think through and articulate your priorities deeply, carefully, and then to align your behavior with your beliefs. So some of the questions to engage with this are, what do I want to do? What do I want to help? Who do I want to help? What's the result? What value will I create? This really involves reflection again. This is what Sherry talked about this morning. This important piece of reflection, and sometimes solitude or sometimes in conversation with others, so that we have the wisdom that we can then bring forward and inform our actions. Some other key questions: what makes you smile? What makes you feel great about yourself? If you had to teach something, what would you teach? And by that, I don't mean just the subject matter. What piece of wisdom would you teach? What are your deepest values? What do you strongly believe in and connect with? What do people typically ask you for help with? So we'd like to ask you to turn to the person who you're sitting next to, or maybe behind you, and just take 2 minutes to each share in response to this prompt. What is the impact that I want to have on the world? Big question. No perfect answer. That's okay. It's just a moment in your very busy lives to reflect and hear from another.
Anybody want to say? Yep.
Yes, please.
Actually, they shared with me that her personal mission statement is to make every child feel valued, which I think is awesome.
To make every child feel valued.
Right. Mine is 100% by yesterday. Meaning 100% of our students get to go to a classroom or a school where there is purpose and mission and value and excitement and engagement and global awareness and everything else.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. 100% by yesterday. Thank you. Anyone else?
Take one more.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Older teacher, Montessori teacher somehow.
Uh-huh.
And for both of us, it would be compassion, more compassion for students who engage in compassionate mindset, adults who engage in compassionate mindset.
Great.
I'm going to
Wonderful.
repeat that?
Compassion.
Compassionate mindset, yeah.
Compassion and mindset, yeah. Okay, and one last one. Anyone? This side. Yes?
Well, we didn't really come up with anything, but I think what came up for us was it was harder to think about the impact on the world versus maybe the impact on our community and for a lot of our students.
Impact on the community, in case you can't hear.
You know, who come from a background where they don't even know that their community extends farther than maybe their own street, per se. For them, when they're thinking of mission statements, like for them to start, they might need to start,
Smaller.
what is your mission statement for your family, or for your, you know what I mean? So the world, to some kids, is like, what? They don't even know that there's other islands, you know, in the island chain, let alone, right? So just that whole mindset. And even for us, it's like, oh my gosh, the world? Like, I'm just trying to focus on our kids in our school.
Great. Right. And you have the world in your classroom in a lot of ways. So it's really focusing on great prompts you could have with the kids in your class around what is the impact you want to have on your family or on your street or in this classroom. Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much. We also wanted to share some of the work that's going on in Character Lab. And so wanted to just point out what we've passed out here. So this hopefully will save you some note-taking because it has some of the key slides here. And then if you want to learn more about anything we share, there's the URL link here as well. So Character Lab is another place where you can go to think about exercises or even learn about the research behind growing some of these key aspects like purpose. One of them that I'll share is the values affirmation research. This is work done by Claude Steele and Jeff Cohen at Stanford and others that really have found that affirming one's value raises the test scores of minority students and of female students in science and math classes. So, a reminder of your core values seems to protect students from a phenomenon called stereotype threat, which is really a concern that these students have about their ability to succeed because of their gender or their race and ethnicity, right? So in this case, really thinking about these core values in some ways bolsters and protects, and we think it's probably because it is linked to this larger sense of purpose, right? So it's no longer that you're just taking a math test and, oh my gosh, I hope I get to do well on this. It's around math in order for you to do what in the world. So one example of a core values exercise, this is one from a Harvard seminar called Reflecting on Your Life. Students are presented with a sheet of paper with about 25 words on it, like dignity, love, fame, family, excellence, wealth, wisdom. And they're just told to circle 5 words that best describe their core values. And then you ask, how might you deal with a situation where one core value conflicts with another? Right? So students find this question particularly challenging. I think it's challenging for us too. One student brought up his own personal dilemma. Right? He wants to be a surgeon. He also wants to have a large family. So his core values included the words useful and family. And he worries a lot about whether he could be a successful surgeon while also being a devoted father. And students couldn't stop talking about this example, right? Because many connected with each other to see themselves facing a similar challenge, right? And oftentimes for students, this comes up a lot around their desire to be of use, but to be of service of their families and to support their families, and also opportunities that may take them away from their families, right? So again, these are just prompts. There's no answers here necessarily. It's just a way to have these deeper conversations so that students in connection with each other and connection with you in the classroom begin to have those deeper self-reflective moments and develop insights and maybe some tactical strategies about how they can think of this. Actually, in the world of business, there are actually some exercises that are evidence-based that have been tested for efficacy that might be adapted also for classrooms. So one of them is Gretchen Spritzer's Reflected Best Self exercise that she uses with MBA students, and this is at the University of Michigan, Ross School of Business. Essentially, right, so you don't have to follow a particular script, but essentially the core activities behind this is identifying people in your life who know you well. So as educators, you can do this with other colleagues, people who've you've learned and mentored you along the way, and ask for their feedback about the times when you just showed up the most positively, your best sense of self, right? And then what you do is you have this data, in a sense, from people who are in your trusted circle, people who've seen the longer arc of your professional development, and you're able to recognize the patterns. And then you can compose, through this exercise, a self-portrait, right? So it's a revised self-narrative around, but centered on your strengths. And then you can use this to then recraft or redesign your job. So another way to look at this is Amy Wierzniewski's work on job crafting exercises. Again, it's saying, what's the best you can offer, the best part of you? And then using that knowledge, how can you then create tasks and shift tasks so that the best part of you shows up the most often, right? I'm sure there are lots of ways you can teach and lots of things like grading and conferences, some of the things that you like more and others that you like less. And this is all about trying to craft your own work so that you can support yourself, right? And I think that's really important. My husband is a high school teacher. I try to encourage him to do this all the time. And there are just some things that he's better at doing and others that he's not at. And so for him to not burn out, because he's trying so hard every day to bring his best self forward, he's crafting his job, right? So this is another tool that you can use. Finally, this is an app that was actually developed with Venerable Tenzin Creates at the MIT Center for Ethics.
Ethics and Transformative Values.
And Transformative Values, there we go. And this is an app that we worked with him to develop, which is really around tracking and aligning our core values in our daily lives. Right? So this is another tool you could use. But what these themes have in common are all just exercises where you can reflect more deeply and gain wisdom about yourself, either through self-reflection or self-reflection paired and mirrored by other people, and then use technology as a way to track and to remind you. So again, not using technology to cut off the conversations where you learn, because it's in conversations with other real-life people, but then to use the technology to really reflect, capture those insights, and have them show up in your life that reminds you of how you can shape your world and your students' lives differently. All right, so I'm going to pass it back to Fred now, and he'll tell you more about the tools for connection and for control.
Hey, thanks, Janxin. So now if you go to the next page, we're going to talk about some tools for connection and creating a greater sense of belonging. So a couple here, again, this is another tools from the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values. And Tenzin Creates, who's the head of that center, is here at the conference and is speaking later today, I believe, right, Robbie? Yeah, so I would welcome you to check out what he's got going on. But what they have done is uploaded some videos at this PBS Learning Media site all around cultivating empathy and tools you can actually do in your classroom to help students get in the shoes of other people and think through, and with very specific prompts. And so the videos actually are things you can show to your students, lead a discussion through, and then there are very specific prompts they give you, and that's all available for free if you're interested in checking those out. Topia, as I'm sure many of you know, is an amazing resource, and they've done a lot of thinking around how to make more compassionate classrooms, and what does that look like. And this particular blog post was all around the simple things you can do throughout the day to just make that happen. Remembering to check in with your students, making sure each of them by name, you're trying to checking in how they're doing. Informal conferencing with those students, making sure you get some alone time to really talk with them. Increasing personal connections with content, finding ways that the content that you're teaching relates to their lives and relates to their families. Asking better questions, just really asking questions that aren't just simple yes-nos, but are really getting at the heart of the matter. Expressing a belief in the students' abilities, really believing in their full potential, and being flexible and accepting failure when it happens, not, saying this is going to happen at times and it's okay and you can get better, and how do we help bring out your best self in your students. Another group that's been doing a lot of work in this area is at Harvard. They have a group called part of their, the Graduate School of Education there has something called Making Caring Common. And they have some really great tools on their website that you can download and use right now to make your school a more caring environment. And they have a bunch of different ways that you can go about that are accessible for free. This is just one example, is how do we create circles of concern, a circle of students to really talk about things when things are really rough and there's something in the media that has really aggravated folks or gotten them? How do you have students get in those kind of discussions with each other and share together? This is another great group. This is StoryCorps, and StoryCorps does some really amazing work where students can, there's an app now where students can get the app, or teachers or anyone, you can get the app, and then you can actually record a conversation and interview someone in your life, whether it's a grandparent, an aunt or an uncle, someone who's meaningful to you, and really hear more about who they are. And it gives you a bunch of prompts that students can use to have those conversations. And so it's this amazing way to build connection between the student and that loved one in their life and learn more about what's going on in their life. And then it can be uploaded to a place where they're kind of collecting all of these stories, and some of which get turned into even little video snippets that are really sweet and amazing. One other tool to let you all know about Ashoka, the Ashoka folks who do amazing work on building change makers, have a whole empathy toolkit that you can download for free that gives lots of tools and recommendations about why empathy, what's the empathy roadmap, how can we get more empathy in our schools so students are really feeling that they can understand what's going on in the lives of other students and put themselves in their position and their perspective. And then this is a relatively new tool that is now online. The mindset folks, well, the growth mindset folks, have done some work, as Janxin was describing earlier in the science piece, around creating this sense of belonging in your classroom and making sure students who maybe feel out of place, how can you help them feel more like this is a normal, natural thing, and you are going to be able to move past that, and we are really supporting you. And so they now have a number of lessons online for educators that are completely free, all around building a sense of belonging in your classrooms. So again, we wanted to give you a moment to just maybe talk to, again, someone next to you of what's one practice or tool in your classroom or school that's really creating a sense of belonging, things that you really feel are working to helping students feel like they belong and that they're connected with each other. So you can take a minute to talk, and then we'll get a couple of suggestions from you all. So does anyone want to share a particular practice or ritual that you use in your classroom or school to help create a sense of belonging and connection? Yep.
I usually greet my students at the door every day as they come in and ask them how they're doing. And I try to be standing at the door when they leave and give them a high five or a fist bump on the way out so that they know that I care about them.
Yeah, so if you didn't hear that, really standing by the door, greeting them by name, being there, and at the end of the day also doing a high five. And again, just making them feel really personally like you are invested in them and connected to them. Yeah?
I'm with Susie Travis, who's a high school principal, and I think one of the things that's emphasized by Susie that really is significant is the importance of developing strong interpersonal relationships between the faculty and the students, so that I think all of the kids feel significant in one way or the other, and encouraging the teachers to talk with the kids, not at the kids.
So that was all about developing really strong interpersonal relationships between students and teachers, students and faculty, and making sure students feel talked with, not talked at, and that there's someone that really cares about them. And the research on this, especially some of the literature on the bullying or kids who really feel socially isolated, is just having one adult in your life that really cares about you, that's looking out for you, is really powerful. And there are some exercises from the Making Caring Common was really around having all the adults in the school actually think about, okay, here's all of our kids, who's connected to which kids, and find which ones maybe have the least amount of connection, and who might be able to reach that student. So that's just an exercise that we've seen work in practice. Okay, I'm gonna move next to some tools around control and around getting a better sense of self-efficacy, a feeling of optimism, and a feeling of empowerment. So here, we have Dr. Mark Brackett here with us. We worked with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and who Mark is the head of, and he's going to be talking later today as a keynote. But he had many tools through a program that he does, a social emotional learning program called Ruler, that's been in about 1,000 schools now. Is that right, Mark? And one of the tools they use is something called the mood meter. And the mood meter is really around helping kids both understand and name their emotions, and then be able to regulate them, understand strategies where how you can shift from one mood to the other. And so you can plot yourself on this axis. And so depending on where you are, it goes from low energy to high energy, from feeling bad to feeling upset to feeling really positive, and you can plot yourself in these different places. And so what the app does, it really allows you to trigger this thing to ask you to check in on your feelings throughout the day. And then you can go ahead and track it. You can put a little description of why you feel that way. You can, if you want to shift out of it, it gives you some examples of things you can do to help you shift out of that emotion state. And it also tracks how much you've been feeling over time. So a really interesting tool to help kind of really have kids understand what's going on with these emotions and take it to the next level. Oh, do you want to talk about the parenting cue cards, or you want me to? You worked on it. Let's you talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
also involving Mark's work at the Yale, but we also teamed up with great schools, and they wanted to create a series of content called Emotional Smarts, and part of that was a parenting cue card, really, which was the idea that when you're in the heat of, I don't want to say battle, but in our parenting moments, it get a little hot sometimes, right? So in those moments, the idea was, could you have something that could just prompt you about what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, that was actually embedded in the science of trying to create emotionally intelligent relationships between parents and kids. Same thing for teachers, right? And a lot of this, is relevant. What happens when you face an incidence of dishonesty around attitude and defiance, positive discipline, motivation, screen time, right? So this is just another resource that we developed with Mark's group and the group at Great Schools. It's an app. It's meant to be something that you can use to prep for those moments, and also afterwards, even if you didn't do such a good job, it wasn't your best self. As a parent, I can relate to that. You look at it afterwards and you think, oh, okay, next time, right? Okay.
Great. Another key piece to having a sense of control is really around our own mindsets and our own beliefs about ourselves and our abilities. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Carol Dweck's work on how to develop a growth mindset, but they now have lots of tools online for how to help your students and yourself have a growth mindset that are all available for free to take a look at and download and learn from. Another key way to build our sense of control, sense of empowerment is also around just stopping, breathing, pausing. There's been a lot of studies out there on the power of just that taking that moment. And so there are several apps out there on the market that are around really helping people get into a headspace and take that time. And Stop, Breathe, and Think was specifically designed with youth in mind. So they have some really nice meditation, essentially, flows that you can go through and take and get that in your practice. So I'm going to now show just a couple of other things. This is Class Dojo, and Class Dojo worked on the growth mindset work and really was like, teachers are struggling with, how do I bring this up with my kids and talk about it? And so what they did is created a series of videos on growth mindset. Now they're actually working on empathy as well, that you can show to young kids and then use that as a conversation starter. And they actually have then materials online to talk to you about how you might lead a conversation about it. I'm just going to show one of these.
Chapter 1. Mojo discovers a secret about his brain. A secret that will change the way he looks at the world forever. Our story begins with Mojo, a friendly monster who loved school, especially math. Until one day, when something terrible happened. The math problems got harder. Nothing made sense anymore. Mojo had a devastating thought. He just wasn't smart enough for school. It seemed the only reasonable thing to do was pack his things and leave forever. Just then, he heard his friend Katie laughing. "Mojo, you can't just give up," she said. "I have no choice, Katie," said Mojo. You're either born smart or you're not. And I realize today that I'm not. Mojo, that's not how it works, said Katie. Anyone can be smart, you just have to work at it. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, said Mojo. It's not ridiculous, it's science, said Katie. Neuroscientists studied the brain for years and discovered an incredible secret, that your brain is like a muscle. When you try challenging things, like those hard math problems, you're giving your brain the exercise it needs to get stronger, which makes you smarter. Ooh, is that really true? Said Mojo. Of course, said Katie. It's like how when you were a baby, you didn't know how to talk. But you kept trying, exercising your brain, until one day you could. Mojo! Mojo couldn't believe what he was hearing. If your brain was really like a muscle, did that mean anyone could become smarter? Even him? He turned to ask Katie, but just then, she had to be off to her next class. But maybe you can answer Mojo's question. What do you think? Can Mojo become smarter? What about you? Now that's an interesting question indeed.
Sweet. Yeah. So they've got, I think it's a series of these. I think there were 6 made on the growth mindset work that you can go through as a series with students. And again, all available online. So the next one is similar, related. This is from the Committee for Children, which has the Second Step Social Emotional Learning Program. And they've been really thinking about how do we take mindfulness and really make it work for young people, for the youngest students. So they created something called Mind Yeti, which has a series of meditations that you can use with your students in the classroom. I'll just show this one briefly.
Your mind is amazing. It's filled with all kinds of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Thoughts that help you figure things out, like your homework. Feelings that can change your mood. And sensations from your body that tell you things, like you're hungry. We call these thoughts, feelings, and sensations hubbubbles. Sometimes, though, the hubbubbles can get pretty distracting. Isn't that right, Yeti? We call this the hubbub. The hubbub makes everything harder than it needs to be. Yup, the hubbub can be a real pain in the brain. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can settle the hubbub with Mind Yeti. Listening to Mind Yeti can strengthen your mind and settle the hubbub. You'll learn to calm your mind, focus your attention, and connect better to the people and world around you. Settle the hubbub and get your mind ready with Mind Yeti.
Okay, so anyway, so some great resources, available for free to be used right now. So I'm just going to go through the other resources really quickly because we want to leave a few minutes for questions. So just a couple of things that we would also mention to you. Greater Good in Action, which is at UC Berkeley, they did some really great work trying to figure out there's a lot of practices that have been research-based that we know can boost things like kindness or compassion, connection, empathy, forgiveness. And that what they wanted to do is really create a portal where easily you could find these practices and put them to work in your own life. So that's all available online. And you can go there to see them. This was a great project that was done actually by the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence as well as by Facebook, really looking at how do our students, especially in the upper grades, the high school level, feel, and what are they feeling now and what do they want to feel? And when you look at the things that they want to feel, they really want to feel more inspired, they want to feel more connected, they want to feel more energized. And what are practices or tools you can try? And many of these were created by youth themselves in concert with a teacher that created actual activities you can try out in your classroom. Many of you probably know CASTLE, but CASTLE has a great bunch of resources on social emotional learning and the programs out there that are evidence-based that you can learn more about. This is another set of tools by the Great Kids and Great Schools folks, as well as the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, which really took some of the tools from Ruler, like the mood meter, but some of the other tools that they have, like the meta moment. The meta moment is really around taking that pause and reflecting on who your best self is before you react to something. And so all of those tools are available online to learn more about. And Common Sense Education has a great number of tools related to, especially in the area of digital citizenship, and how can we build more sense of belonging and make sure in the digital realm kids are being kind to each other, and what does that look like? So that is what we had to talk about. So I think we wanted to give at least a minute or a couple of minutes for questions. I'm sorry we don't have tons of time, but questions or comments? Okay.
Okay, we have extras here, so if it's useful, you can take extras to bring back to your schools. So we'll leave them by the doorway. But thank you so much, and
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.